This is Catholic Forum. I'm Bob Krebs. November the 5th through the 11th is National Vocations Awareness Week, a time to promote vocations to the priesthood and the religious life. My guest today is the Director of the Office of Priestly and Religious Vocations for the Catholic Diocese of Wilmington and the pastor of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Parish in Bear, Delaware, Father Norm Carroll. Father, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you on the program. You've been here a few times before. It's always a pleasure
Good to be here.
To have you here. And it's always good to talk about vocations. Before we get into that, just tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would, please.
I'm a native of Delaware, grew up in Newcastle. I went to Holy Spirit as my parish all of my childhood. Went to elementary school there. I went to a Votech high school. From there, from Delcastle, I got a job as a draftsman. So I worked for about 5 years. And in that time, got more involved in my church, and that led to people seeing what made me happy, and I had to listen to them. So that's kind of part of my vocation story.
Yeah.
Just kind of a surrender. That what I was doing with my church was what was giving me the most excitement. But I'll be a priest 30 years later on this month.
Yeah.
And
congratulations.
Thank you.
30 years, and you also have a
big birthday coming up.
Too,
yeah, so I'll be
right?
60 in December.
Yeah, that's
so,
great. Yeah.
I was ordained just about a month and a half before my 30th birthday, so it makes my math easier.
Yeah, that's good.
My ordination and my birth are always 30 years apart.
That's cool. So you mentioned your vocation story. Share that with us, if you would, please.
Yeah, just growing up in my house, Catholic from the very beginning, born and raised. You didn't live in my parents' house and not go to church. Even in those teenage and 20-year-old years. That might mean that sometimes I went and found a mass at night on Sunday.
Right.
But you went to church. And so when I graduated high school and was working full-time, somebody twisted my arm and talked me into teaching religious ed, or CCD at the time. I did that for a number of years, ended up starting on a young adult Bible study, and the more that I got involved in my parish and more involved I got in my church, people saw that was when I was most alive, most excited, and I heard that from people that were my friends, people were family, people that I worked with, because I talked about things I was doing, and I just was hearing that from around me, and I was either going to go back to school to get a degree in mechanical engineering, because I didn't have a bachelor's at that point,
right,
or I was going to go do something else, and the call won.
Yeah, that's good.
Kind of a surrender moment. Yeah.
Yeah, we're glad you did something else. I mean, I'm sure you would have made a wonderful engineer, but we're glad to have you here. And I guess it's an important lesson for everyone. If you in your life see someone who is a young man who is working around the church, and it looks like they might have a calling, say something to them.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
And listen to
most young people are looking for validation from other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's certainly what I've learned from my own story. It seems to be what's happening in parishes and the guys that are surfacing to discern the priesthood. National studies tell us that most men that go into the seminary were encouraged by between 4 and 5 people. So people that know them well, people that were total strangers that saw something in them, and asked them to think about the question.
Yeah, that's great. So let's talk about some of the men that are in formation for our diocese.
Okay, right now we have 12.
That's good.
Good number.
Yeah.
Jesus thought so.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
And a mix of guys who grew up here in Delaware and are natives and know the diocese well, and some others that have some connections and made their way here. And we're thankful for that. We have 10 that are in the theologate. 2 of those are on pastoral year in parishes in our diocese. And we have 2 guys that are in college. So just maybe to mention a few, certainly at the top there is Deacon James Gebhardt.
Yeah.
James has been on this program, I know. He's also preparing, now a deacon, preparing for ordination this coming May. Grew up here in Delaware, St. Catherine's. I met him at St. Elizabeth when St. Catherine's School closed, and he transferred over to St. Elizabeth Elementary School, and he was a 7th grader. And then from there he went to DMA and Goldie Beacom, and like has happened in many cases, guys end up going to college, kind of going with their plan, and then in the midst of that, things change. So James came to us as a sophomore in college, and went to college seminary and then to St. Mary's, and has been great, has some great experiences. and we're looking forward to May.
He was the valedictorian for his college. And,
Yes, at Seton Hall University.
Yeah, not just the seminary, for the entire university.
college.
Yeah,
Yes.
which is very impressive. And I can't imagine James as doing anything other than priesthood, because he just seems like he's made for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you knew him before he had a beard, so that was.
I knew him when he was a little kid. Yeah.
That's great. So who else do we have in the pipeline?
Let me
so to
just
speak?
say a
Yeah.
few things about some of our new guys.
Okay.
Joseph Lewis comes to us as parishes St. Benedict's and St. Elizabeth, and originally in Denton. And Joe is a former Air Force, and he ended up in Denton because he moved in with his friend who was in the Air Force with him. Again, that question was always there in his ministry amidst his service for our country, and then encouraged when he landed himself in Denton, living in Denton, and is now at St. Mary's and as a pre-theologian. So we have a number of guys, and continue to talk to a number of guys who have some military experience.
Yeah, that's
talking to
interesting.
2 guys right now for a possibility for the future.
I guess they're used to that, to just kind of like devoting their lives to service.
Correct.
And when they get out of the military, if
Yeah.
you're a devout Catholic, and I mean, this seems like could be a natural progression or a
Sure.
natural calling. Yeah.
Sense of discipline, sense of purpose, and
Yep.
mission, uniform. So all those things. There's a lot of similarities between the military and even civil service in our country and the priesthood. Some of the lifestyle,
Right,
that,
right.
and the kind of conviction and motivation that go along with it.
So is he a little older, or?
Yes, he's. I'm going to say that Joe is about 28.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's not too late to start.
Not at all.
Yeah. Mhm.
Not at all. And then lastly, our newest guy, Jacob Brown, who's from my parish, St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. Again, Jacob transferred from the University of Delaware into college seminary. Like I said, seems to be a pattern. Guys start college, kind of have this dream in mind, and then things change, and that's fine.
Yeah, sure.
So Jacob is now at John Paul II Seminary in Washington, D.C., and attends Catholic University of America. He is the first of our seminarians to be participating in the propedeutic stage.
What does that mean?
So the church internationally is revising again seminary formation, and here in our country, the revision is more commonly known as the Program for Priestly Formation, with revision number 6, so affectionately known by seminarians and priests as PPF 6.
PPF 6.
And one of the changes in that is to have this introductory discovery stage to make sure the guys have a great foundation going into the seminary. So
Is that academic or spiritual?
not mostly focused on spiritual and doctrine teachings of the church. And it's in a good sense of community and prayer life that goes along with that. Again, setting a foundation for the experience in the seminary, making sure the guys have what they need. Like I said, we have guys, seminarians, who come to us who have been Catholic all of their life and know some things that they don't even know they know until somebody mentions it. And they go, oh, yeah, I remember that. And we have other guys who are new to Catholicism. We certainly are patient with that. We're not supposed to accept anybody who's not been a Catholic for at least 2 years. But there's a lot of Catholic culture and tradition that they might have been told about, but they don't know, they haven't lived.
Right. Things that we take for granted.
Things that we take for granted, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the guys who go on to be ordained are much more successful if they have a real good parish experience that they grew up with and they know. And so the things they get hit with from parishioners, they know what they're talking about. They know the language.
Right.
So it's certainly the program for priestly formation, which has the 4 dynamics or pillars we talk about: human, intellectual, spiritual, and pastoral. All have their components that need to be addressed, and certainly is done well in the seminary these days.
And that's something new. And is that before they start the college seminary, or it just depends on where that individual seminarian is in his journey?
Well, that's a big part of the new revision, is to look at seminary formation as more fluid. Take a guy where he's at.
Gotcha.
Put some give the bishop some leverage to kind of say this guy needs a little bit less time, this guy needs a little more time. So there's that ability is there, a little bit more flexible in some of the things that will be implemented as we go forward. This is not going to affect anybody who's currently in the seminary.
Right.
But the propedeutic stage is for anybody who's going to be beginning. College seminaries like John Paul II, where Jacob attends, and Anthony Miranda, they have designed a program so that the propedeutic stage is part of their first year in the seminary.
Gotcha.
So because it's a college seminary and not a theologate, they have the flexibility to say, yeah, well, we're going to make the requirements of this propedeutic stage part of our first year experience, and be able to get them through the college experience in 4 years. A little bit different when it's the theologate, like St. Mary's Seminary in Baltimore, where our guys go. Anybody that would be applying this year and there's years after would have to do the propedeutic stage first, and then pre-theology if they need it, and then theology. So it adds another year to formation for a lot of guys.
Right. But it seems like it's working out. I mean, we have 12.
Yes.
That seems like a kind of a large number compared to maybe in the past.
We're doing pretty good.
Why is that? I mean, is it because of your hard work? I know, but is there any other reasons that you can see?
I would say most fundamentally because the priests are doing what they need to do. And the people of God, but mostly the priests. Most of our guys who come to us because a priest has encouraged them, has saw something in them, was there to answer their questions, kind of help them with what the next step was. It's always a good thing when the priests are encouraging, especially in the days that we're in, or have been in, I should say. But it's always important when somebody comes to meet with me that they know their pastor and their pastor knows them. If they say, I've never met him, never talked to him, I get a little concerned.
Sure, yeah, right.
There might be something there, but...
Sure. So not only is it up to the lay people, family members, coworkers, friends to point this out to a young man, but it's important for the pastor to be aware.
Yes.
If somebody has this idea, maybe it's a calling that they feel in their heart, maybe it's something that their friend or pastor has talked to them about. Like, what is the first thing that they should do?
The first thing they should do is make sure their pastor knows who they are.
Yeah.
In many cases, they know, because it's a good sign if a guy's involved. He's part of a young adult group, or he's a lector, or a Eucharistic minister, or whatever the case might be. He's involved in some kind of parish activity, or grew up in the parish, and so the pastor certainly knows who he is. So that's all good. Sometimes guys are a little more quiet in their ministry, like the people of God are more quiet in their ministry. We have people who need to be part of the background, and
sure,
and that's wonderful too. Oftentimes, if a name surfaces and I talk to a pastor, I go, "Oh, I think I know who that is," and then they realize, "Yeah, I see him all the time."
Right. It just didn't connect the name.
Just not right in front of my face.
Yeah. Right.
But certainly that's a good foundation to make sure that if they're inquiring about diocesan priesthood, that their parish, their priest knows who they are.
So at least maybe talk to the priest.
Right.
Would be
talk to the
first step. Yeah.
Because eventually we're going to be asking the pastor for his reference and support for this candidate.
Yeah.
And then also initially part of that is to connect with our office through email or through telephone number, and sit down and meet, talk to the guy about where he's at and what would be the next best steps forward.
How does the Eucharist play into a vocation? Obviously it's the center of the priesthood.
Correct.
We're celebrating the Eucharistic revival now all across the world.
Right.
What is your feelings about that?
Oh, it's fundamental. A guy really has to understand and appreciate that, what it is that a priest does, how Christ becomes present to us in the Eucharist, and then being present to us. Certainly, we can spend time in his presence, and so the importance of adoration and exposition, spend some time before the Blessed Sacrament as an important part of their prayer life.
Are you finding that some of the young men that are coming to you have experienced that, have been in front of the Eucharist during adoration? Is that a common place where these seeds might be planted?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely part of the sometime in adoration or just during prayer life. Oftentimes also through praying the Rosary. Most guys have some story of some encounter that affected them in a powerful, profound way that they carry with them. And as vocation director, I find myself often, when guys are struggling or having questions, I remind them, go back to what was the initial spark all about? Tell me that story again, because that's important.
Yeah.
To kind of know what the motivation was, continue to be, and encourage guys to go back, make sure they're continuing to do that.
Do we have any religious information?
We do. It's kind of hard to keep track of who in our diocese is in religious formation. Obviously, when someone's applying for diocesan priesthood, and
Right.
I have to be on top of them, I know who they are. But we do have some individuals in parishes that have surfaced, had some conversations with. I've directed them to some religious communities, and from there on, they'll go on retreats with this community or that community and kind of find their way. Just this past year, I had a young man who was inquired about diocesan priesthood. Had some conversations with him. He went to the seminary, enjoyed going to the seminary to visit with our seminarians. I set him up with a spiritual director, a priest in our diocese, and that was good for him. And through that process, he went to go visit the Benedictines in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. And he's there now as their postulant.
Yeah, great.
So certainly we can do whatever we can in the vocation office as part of the diocese to find people to help have the right kind of conversations and help people discern. And if their calling, whether it's just a different calling, is religious life.
Sure.
Whether it's a brother or a sister or as a priest brother, there's all kinds of options.
Yeah. Well, starting November 5th through the 11th is Vocation Awareness Week. Tell us about that.
It's a national observance of vocations, kind of just give us a little bit of a amp it up what we're supposed to be doing in regards to supporting and promoting vocations. One of the simplest things I try to encourage with priests and with parishes is to ask them to pray, and to pray out loud, more importantly, because young people sitting in the pews will hear what you're interested in, what the parish would support when they hear you say it. When you're praying publicly for vocations and saying that people around you, people in this church, are going to support you if you decide to ask that question or explore that question.
Right. If it's never mentioned in the prayer of the faithful, then must not be important.
Must not be important.
So so put that in the prayer of the faithful.
Would the parish encourage me if
Sure.
if I wanted to go in this direction? Correct.
Yeah. What else?
Giving young people the opportunities to talk, whether it's through youth ministry, knowing people in their parish, engaging them in ministry as part of liturgy, whether it's music or lecturing or being a minister of Holy Communion, ways that they can get some experience of what ministry in the church can be all about.
Yeah. Often, and again, this is a generalization, we go to Mass on Sunday and we see a lot of people with hair my color, or,
Right.
or like yours, and you think, where are the young people? Is that a problem that we don't have the young people in the church? It seems like we're doing okay, even though that might not be the case in some parishes.
Correct. Yeah, we certainly could do better with getting young people engaged in parish life.
Yeah.
And more importantly, like I said, young people engaged in the work of the church, whether it's in liturgy or outreach or whatever the case might be, so that they can see the whole bigger picture.
Yeah.
Certainly, it has to start with a relationship with God, with Jesus Christ, and a prayer life. But how does that become real? What's the doing about? And the more that we can engage, then the more they're going to be around, and more possible it is to ask that question: could I be doing something like this, something that could make me happy for the rest of my life?
Yeah,
'Cause
sure.
ultimately, that's what I think God wants for all of us, to be happy. And we run in all kinds of different directions trying to find that. So
Yeah, for sure. Which leads me back to what we started about in the beginning. Your calling, your priesthood. Now, I've known you for about 22 or 23 years. You were in Ridgely, I think.
Okay, yep.
Back then.
I was.
And you were the pastor of St. Elizabeth's. You're now the pastor of St. Elizabeth Antietam. Talk about your priesthood. Has it been everything that you wanted it to be?
Oh, and more.
Yeah.
A lot of surprises. Most of them good.
Most of them good. Good.
But certainly has been great ministering to the people.
What do you like?
Being mindful what it is that I do when I stand in the person of Christ and make Christ present through the Eucharist, and how profound and powerful that is. I think we need to get better at talking about the mystery that is part of our faith. That certainly can be profound in terms of prayer life for young people. Not everything has to be explained. Not everything has to be, black and white. God calls us to a journey, which is a little bit more complex than that. And
sure.
I think it would be great for young people to hear that we're willing to talk about the complexities of anybody's journey. Yeah.
So it's been a great 30 years for you.
It has
Congratulations.
been. It has been. Thank you.
And happy birthday.
Thank you.
And are you going to do anything special to celebrate?
Well, of course, I belong to a parish that likes to celebrate, so we have plans to do an event in between both of those significant dates.
That's great.
So,
And if someone listening would like to get more information, where can they go?
they can go to the diocesan website, cdow.org, and go to the Vocations tab,
Right.
Where they can call 302-573-3113, and at any time that phone call will go to my cell phone.
Great, very good. Good, perfect. So if anybody's out there listening who would like to talk to Father Carroll about his car warranty or about the priesthood, give that number a call. Father, thanks so much for being with us today on Catholic
Great to be
Forum.
here.